There will be an end times wealth transfer from the sinner to the righteous. Anyone ever heard this one before? You are very fortunate. But I wanted to tackle it. Well, we'll get into that. But first of all, is this a not quote? No? Okay. A misquote? A part quote? Or an interpret quote?
I was there when you came up with the name. I still can't tell you what you mean by that.
It'll make sense.
I don't know what he means by that.
This is someone's interpretation of that.
That's it.
Right, okay, so this one is a part quote, but also a misquote at the same time.
What's the proverb reference?
We are looking at Proverbs 13:22. And Proverbs 13:22 says this: a good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children, but the sinner's wealth is laid up for the righteous. Now, what's happened to this passage as it's been reinterpreted by some very prominent Bible teachers, including Matthew Ashimolowo, to say this is a prophecy that in the end times there'll be a wealth transfer from the world to the church. And there's all kinds of things about that and acquiring wealth. As Christians, it's our duty to acquire wealth. That comes out of that. Now, the reason I wanted to hit this one was twofold. First of all, we need to, if ever we hear something like that, it's good to know it's nonsense. And that he never quotes the entire verse. He only takes the second bit. But also, I think it's important that we understand how to approach the book of Proverbs. Because the book of Proverbs should never be used as prophetic. Because it's a book of Proverbs. That's right. Now, what is a proverb?
Well, as we sort of alluded to earlier, a proverb is a truism. And what we mean by a truism is an observation of something that tends to be true. Right? What it's not is a promise, it's not a guarantee, and it's not a prophecy. So, for example, bring up your children well, bring up them right before the Lord, and guess what? They won't what? They won't depart. The faith, essentially. Right? Which is largely true. Is it true in every case? No.
And it's important that we recognize that, because there are parents who absolutely tear themselves over the fact that their children have wandered. But God promised. And what we get in Proverbs is not promises.
No.
Other Christians also will quote that to fellow Christians.
Yes.
And it ain't good.
It doesn't help.
Not good. No, not at all.
It doesn't help.
Because it
And
said
it
as a
actually makes you feel
criticism.
worse. It says as a criticism, well, you must have brought them up wrong. That's the implication in that. And it's very important that we tackle that kind of thing, because it is not helpful, it's not good, and it's not true.
I mean, think about God and Adam. If you think of Adam as his son,
Oh, yeah.
he went astray. He did.
And that's just one. I mean, that's an important one. Do you want to continue on that?
Yeah, I mean, there's many proverbs that we could go into. In fact, I think we did at one of these sessions.
We did a whole bunch
while,
of proverbs. Yeah.
So we've got to be very careful. So what can we expect from the book of Proverbs? We can find things that by and large work out the way that it says, by and large, but not every time. Is it a good idea to bring up your kids right in knowledge of the Lord? Absolutely. Are they more likely to stay in the faith? Don't get me wrong, I think most kids go away, but whether they come back's the question. You know? And if they've got a firm foundation, they're more likely to come back than if they hadn't.
Truisms are generally true, and we need to ensure that if we're in a position, back to the children one, where children have gone away from God, we don't lose hope. Because if we brought them up in the faith, we know that there's a foundation there. And that does put them in a better position than most other people in the world. So we don't lose hope, but what we can't do is feel condemned because we're not living up to what we think is a promise. But don't lose hope.
Yeah. You will be rewarded if you live right. If you obey God, you'll have something to leave your grandchildren. If you don't obey God, those who live right will get what you leave. You know.
It's essentially, if you don't live right, you're not going to have any money left because you're going to spend it all.
Yes.
And the people who do live right are going to have something left. It's in a sense, if you're foolish with your money, you're not going to have any.
You know, if you spend all your money having food, fun, you're not probably going to have much left to give the kids.
Yeah. So when you dig into it, you can see how it's been twisted and misused, and I think it's important we recognise it. But also, with all of Proverbs, we have to remember how to read them. There's another proverb, and again, I might misquote it. Sorry. But commit all your ways to the Lord, and He will give you great success. Now, you could start a business, and you could pray, commit it to God, and the business can still fail. That doesn't mean you've done it wrong. It's because this is a truism, not a promise.
And if you've got lousy business skills, just because you've got a good heart doesn't mean to say the business is going to work.